If you're familiar with the Frutiger Aero aesthetic, then there's a slight chance you have dipped your toes into the much smaller and niche world of Frutiger Metro. In my head, I like to think of Frutiger Metro as the baby brother or offspring of the aforementioned Frutiger Aero. Frutiger Metro, in my opinion, gives off a completely different feeling than its much popular predecessor. But just because it evokes different connections and emotions than Frutiger Aero, it still holds that gripping fondness of nostalgia. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of overanalyzed aesthetics from the 2000s, we have to first understand and get a recap on what Frutiger Aero is, to fully comprehend and appreciate the brilliance of Frutiger Metro. Frutiger Aero. This aesthetic can be defined as a broad design style and aesthetic that was prevalent in advertising, media, stock imagery, and technology from roughly 2004 to 2013. Some key characteristics that are most common in the Frutiger Aero aesthetic is the use of glossy textures, nature, cloudy skies, aqua life, bubbles, lens flares, vibrant colors, Frutiger fonts, and skeuomorphism, which is basically the design concept of making items that resemble their real-world counterparts, kinda like the ones I'm showing on screen. The name Frutiger Aero comes from two different variables. The Frutiger part is taken from the Frutiger fonts that you can commonly find in Frutiger Aero related things. The Aero aspect is grabbed from Windows Aero, which was the UI theme on Windows Vista and Windows 7. Basically, the interface on Windows computers went from looking like this to this, which is glassy and futuristic as frick. To put my thoughts on Frutiger Aero into the easiest words possible, I'd have to steal a quote from my YouTube friend, Kylie Bogley, in which she pretty much states that Frutiger Aero was the future that we were promised, but never had. In the early 2000s, the designs on pretty much everything started to change, and things were about to get freaking Frutiger Aero'd up. Office spaces started to get experimental, and the results were squeaky clean and bright as heck. Advertisements started to depict a perfect world in which things seemed much more advanced, but in the best way possible. Design concepts for buildings and their interiors started to look more and more dystopian, but in the coolest way possible. Soap bottles, fish tank lamps, cell phones, computers, computer interfaces, monitors, laptops, mouses, robot dogs, Wii remotes, Xbox 720s, Kids Bop album covers, early Vocaloid music videos, toilets, chairs. There was so much colorful, translucent plastic in the air, and the future seemed optimistic. When graphic design artists in the 2000s started cooking bangers like this, alongside the influx of the items I just mentioned, how could you not envision the future to genuinely go this futuristic, bio-friendly direction? Granted, I am pretty young, so I don't even have that many memories from the 2000s to begin with, which might sound crazy to a lot of people watching, but from the media I have seen, I feel like I'm expressing the same feelings that many other people have. But with that being said, I did get to witness the downfall of Frutiger Aero. In the early 2010s, my family computer was running on Windows 7, and that's the operating system I grew up learning on, and ended up using until Windows 8 forced itself to download on the computer. My beloved Windows 7 went from having that authentic Frutiger Aero interface to looking like this. Why is everything so flat? Okay, we like boxes now. Actually, we like to just shove everything into a nicely fitted flat box. Alright, the lock screen wallpaper is pretty nice. What you just witnessed is essentially what happened to Frutiger Aero as a whole. In the early to mid 2010s, companies and businesses mutually decided that this was too tacky. They then moved away from the futuristic, skeuomorphic style and instead rebranded everything into a more sleek, minimalist design. iPhones and iPods once looked like this, and then one day, iOS 7 came around, and everything went flat and simple. Not only was it online media that started to lose its graphic charm, but the real physical world started to rebrand alongside the decay of Frutiger Aero. Classic fast food restaurants that had such memorable and nostalgic designs started to get torn down, and replaced with that same minimalist, boring, boxy style. With the combination of the digital world losing any creative character it once had, and to see so many nostalgic places disappear in different ways, it's so easy to not only feel sad about it, but to also miss what once was. Of course, when reminiscing on the past, it does get pretty toxic because it's not often that we remember the bad or horrible things that were going on back then because we are too focused on what was better back then. And I think a huge bittersweet feeling that comes with looking back at Frutiger Aero is the realization that we never got to truly live in a world that looks like this. But what if I told you that there was a subgenre of Frutiger Aero that a lot of people did get to experience? And while it wasn't the big and bright grassy valleys with butterflies and skyscrapers that you dream of, it was entirely different. This subgenre is called Frutiger Metro. Frutiger Metro shares more differences than similarities with Frutiger Aero. The biggest one right off the bat is that Frutiger Metro almost always has a two-dimensional design, while Frutiger Aero has that 3D quality to it. Another huge difference that also comes to mind is that the Frutiger Aero aesthetic can be viewed as what the future was supposed to look like. And as you can already imagine, Frutiger Aero gave up a lot of false hope when the world moved away from its tacky, futuristic designs. Frutiger Metro, on the other hand, never gave in to any false promises, but purely existed as an aesthetic in the present moment. I don't think anybody ever looked at something like this and thought, man, the world should have came to this, because how could the world manifest itself to be this? It's just a flat image made up of vector graphics, and that's only one side of the many characteristics of Frutiger Metro. But what even makes something Frutiger Metro? Frutiger Metro? Frutiger Metro? To finally begin with, Frutiger Metro can be defined as a broad design aesthetic that encompasses the Frutiger vector-based graphic designs of the 2000s, utilizing glossy textures, abstract flourishes, humanism, nature, radiant blocks, and bloom elements. It combines flat, minimalist graphics with the maximalist design philosophy, typically catering to a preteen/teenage demographic. Some popular examples of Frutiger Metro are images like these. You got the classic one with the speakers, along with pictures like this one, which kind of give off some sort of Christian mom or Christian daughter wallpaper in the early 2010s. I hope you get what I mean by that, that's just what I get. Anyway, Frutiger Metro is a pretty hard aesthetic to confine. Now, what I mean by this is that an aesthetic like Frutiger Aero, we can all agree that something like this can be considered Frutiger Aero, but then something like this, it doesn't really fit the criteria. In Frutiger Metro, on the other hand, this is Frutiger Metro, but this can also be Frutiger Metro. Let's break down the Frutiger Metro family, but with the help of the freaking awesome YouTuber, ShaiiValley.
Similar to how Frutiger Aero has many of its own subgenres, such as Frutiger Eco and Frutiger Aurora, Frutiger Metro can be broken down into many different parts. To start off, we have Vector Bloom, which has a heavy emphasis on the use of flowers and flourishes, on exclusively flat yet maximalistic patterns that contain flat colors and gradients. Along with this, there's Vector Garden, also known as Floral Metro, which is characterized by minimalistic abstract flourish patterns, flowers, auroras, butterflies, and bubbles. Funky Metro is a popular subgenre of Frutiger Metro, and is best known for showcasing musical instruments, speakers, DJ mixers, headphones, microphones, and human silhouettes. Funky Metro can be very reminiscent of the closely related Funky Seasons aesthetic, which was the result of an iPod advertising campaign in the early 2000s. Additionally, there's many more Frutiger Metro subgenres that are centered around the key elements of music and silhouettes, like Rave Metro, and the much lighter Musical Metro. While all these subgenres have their own unique traits and qualities, they end up sharing a lot of the core aspects of Frutiger Metro, which essentially means that these can all be considered Frutiger Metro in their own right, despite any major or minor differences. Anyway, there's still two more significant subgenres that need to be discussed, but I'll leave that to Jaden Salads.
The last two subgenres of Frutiger Metro that ultimately give me my own perception of what Frutiger Metro looks like is Grungy Metro, and just flat out Metro. Let's start out with the infinitely cooler Grungy Metro. The definition of this one is the heavy focus on the grungier elements of Frutiger Metro, which are often associated with the emo, scene, and urbling aesthetics. I don't know about the people that are watching this right now, but I personally love to look back at the scene aesthetic that rose to popularity in the mid-2000s. The things I would do to dress like this, play on my Xbox 360, and then go and rave at a Broken Side concert. That was, for the most part, a joke. But with me saying that half satirically, there is a lot of charm and nostalgia when looking at pictures like these. And if you're wondering where Frutiger Metro fits into all of this, well, I'd like to think that the scene aesthetic of the 2000s to early 2010s kind of coexisted with the rise and downfall of Frutiger Metro. I'd actually find it hard to believe that most of the kids we're looking at didn't have MySpace wallpapers that look something along the lines of the ones I'm showing. Grungy Metro, to me, is what makes Frutiger Metro so special in my eyes. While there would be people that would argue that subgenres like Grungy Metro can't be considered Frutiger Metro, all because it lacks certain qualities, I'd have to disagree with that sentiment. Grungy Metro, along with the rest of the subgenres I've talked about, in one way or another, focus on the core components of what makes something Frutiger Metro. At the end of the day, Frutiger Metro is, in quotes, a broad design aesthetic that combines flat, minimalist graphics with the maximalist design philosophy that typically caters to a preteen/teenage demographic. And stuff like this fits the criteria. So, I've already talked a lot about Frutiger Metro, but I haven't touched on where the Metro aspect comes from. Similar to how the Frutiger Aero name comes from the combination of the Frutiger type fonts and the Windows Aero interface, Frutiger Metro is pretty much the same thing, but instead of Windows Aero, it takes its surname from Windows Metro. Remember how at the beginning of the video, I mentioned how I grew up on a Windows 7 computer, a computer that had that sweet Aero UI? Well, it then updated to Windows 8. Which was accompanied with a completely different user interface. That interface was none other than Windows Metro. I'd also like to add that the Metro design language didn't completely remove that Windows Aero look, as it was optional between which one you wanted to use at the time, but that's besides the point. Frutiger Metro is called what it is simply because it shares the same design philosophy as the Metro design language. Although, when I see things that are under the Metro or flat Metro name, it doesn't really evoke any nostalgic feelings within me, but it's still a counterpart of Frutiger Metro. Before we hit the end of the video, this is the part that I'm looking forward to. What does Frutiger Metro even look like? What does it remind us of? And what things are Frutiger Metro? In no particular order, here's what I have to list off, so feel free to leave your own list in the comment section. Gym Class Heroes have a plethora of Frutiger Metro styled covers. Alright Still by Lily Allen. This Fort Minor album always gave me some Frutiger Metro vibes, but maybe it's just that early 2000s nostalgia. Lazarus by Travis McCoy. The music video for The Good Life by Kanye West. The music video for Day and Night by Kid Cudi. Universal Mind Control by Common. These alternative wallpaper options for the Xbox 360 were pure mint. And this dark one right here was a personal favorite. The many iconic iPod commercials are the pure depiction of Frutiger Metro. You can't really talk about things that are Frutiger Metro without mentioning any grade school yearbook that looked like this. From what I've seen, Domo seems to be some sort of figurehead of Frutiger Metro. Not only are there lots of different media where Domo is included within Frutiger Metro styled things, but his involvement with 2000s teenage nostalgia seems to make sense that he's here on the list. The Blob 2 is literally Frutiger Metro if it were a video game, and I think a lot of people would have to argue that Little Big Planet can also have the same title. The problem here is that I've never actually played Little Big Planet, but I get the vibes. Just Dance is also Frutiger Metro if it were a video game. The Kick Buttowski intro, Zoe 101 as a whole, DJ Hero had a heavy Erbling aesthetic to it, and the music in the game kinda sounds like what you think Grungy Metro would sound like. I've heard lots of people make the comparison that Frutiger Metro is just the flat version of Frutiger Aero, and that's never really been the case for me. The majority of Frutiger Metro related things, aside from a subgenre like Frutiger Eco, aren't comparable to Frutiger Aero at all. While they both have Frutiger in their names, both Aero and Metro are their own individual aesthetics. They both give us heavy feelings of nostalgia and are a constant reminder for what the past once looked like. But, as most nostalgia-ridden things tend to go through, Frutiger Metro is making its comeback. A popular artist, like Pink Pantheress, has showcased some pretty Frutiger Metro-like visuals in one of her latest music videos. A personal favorite of mine for an artist who's pushing the Frutiger Metro revival is the rising hyperpop artist Romance Planet. From the TikToks they make, in which they dress like a late 2000s scene kid, to their authentic low-quality music videos, I love everything about this. Finally, I would also love to mention these Frutiger Metro sort of edits that have been going viral on YouTube and TikTok. There's something about these that just make it so good. Thank you for watching my video essay retrospect yap session on something that I find pretty cool. I hope you enjoyed it, and more importantly, I hope you related to the feelings I have on Frutiger Metro. Nostalgia is a drug. Huge props to the Frutiger Metro Aesthetics Wiki, and shout out to ShaiiValley for hopping on the track. If you're interested in lost media and internet core sort of stuff, then you'd probably be a fan of ShaiiValley. With all of that out of the way, stay tuned for next week's video. It's pretty nostalgia related, and here's a personal shout out to each and every one of my Patreon members: Bella M, Damsandee, 3LMMO, Jera, Sinful, Josh S, Josh Wynn, Landon Rodriguez, Leon S, Lexi Bunny, Master Shake, Meeko, Misazaki, Mustlord, what's up Mustlord, go check out their Bandcamp, Share, The Good Bunch, and Z Salt.
I go to sleep at 9 o'clock, this bitch stays up all night. Bye.